When said casualties, does it mean injury or death or both? Both, but it is commonly understood as deaths. Both. A casualty is something that prevents a soldier from fighting, so death or a serious injury qualifies. Medically speaking, a casualty is anyone who has sustained an injury. This includes fatalities. Casualties usually refers to both injuries and deaths in a situation like an accident or conflict. So it covers the whole spectrum, those who are hurt and those who have lost their lives. It should be both, but many people misunderstand it to mean only deaths. If you hear X number of casualties, you should check to see if they mean only deaths or both. Yeah, up until 10 seconds ago. Both. I've always wondered if an injured soldier is counted if his wounds will heal in a month or so. Like, temporarily out of the fight instead of permanently out of the fight. Both. Casualty in a military context means someone has been injured sufficiently that they are, at least temporarily, no longer able to fight. Could be anything from a sprained ankle to death. Or it could just be shell shock, without them ever being physically injured. Or in fact, they could be completely unharmed but have been captured. Sometimes, deserters are listed as casualties as well, since the term is usually used in a context of how much of a unit is still able to operate, rather than what actually happened to the soldiers. Brown bread. Technically, casualty means all dead plus all who are too injured to keep fighting, even temporarily. But in sloppy typical use it often gets substituted to refer to just deaths, which creates an immense amount of confusion. Whenever you see a news piece talking about casualties, you must check the source, and possibly the source's source, and so on until you get to some originating piece of information that either says deaths or deaths plus wounded explicitly. If you can't find such an unambiguous root source, dismiss the entire thing because otherwise you have no idea what you are accepting as fact. But often you can find some originating report that makes it clear what was initially intended. And then you will see how over the course of being copy-pasted and recited and having headlines slapped onto it, it went from one meaning to another meaning. It sucks that you, the reader, have to do that job. That should be the job of journalists. But journalism as such is all but dead now. Casualties are both injuries and deaths. Fatalities are only deaths. Those saying casualties usually means deaths are misunderstanding both terms. Casualties mean both. Hope they are mostly just paper cuts. I believe casualties describe fatalities. It might be different in the military. Correctly used, casualty includes both deaths and injuries sufficiently serious that the person can't continue fighting. I heard somewhere that Americans think of casualty as death and Brits others think of it as both, well, death. But I think it's more an occupational thing. Or at least I watched too many American shows and got my mind poisoned as a result. I would understand casualties as deaths. I'm not a native speaker,